This is Carolina Ghost Towns, a podcast about the vanished towns and lost communities in South Carolina, North Carolina, and maybe a few other places. I'm your host, Tom Taylor. One of the Carolina ghost towns that has fascinated me is the town of Kingsbury in Lancaster County, South Carolina. Located on the Catawba River, Kingsbury started out as a ferry town. It appears on the 1825 Lancaster District map in Robert Mill's Atlas of South Carolina. In the late 1700s, Andrew McIlwain chartered a ferry across the Catawba just below the Great Falls area, where Cedar Creek enters the river. John Kingsbury purchased the rights to the ferry from McIlwain in 1811, along with a large plot of land on either side of Cedar Creek. According to an article in the Chester News, Kingsbury built a large stone house at the site of his ferry. One correction here. Despite what this article says, Kingsbury did not build the stone house. The stone house was built as a lock keeper's house at Rocky Mount. In 1970, it was moved and rebuilt on the other side of the river and is now part of Lanford Canal State Park. But this article does say, quote, "In the early years of the last century, our ferry was known as Kingsbury's Ferry, from the owner and operator, John Kingsbury. His residence was the old rock house at the eastern end of the ferry. It is told of him that he kept his coffin under his bed for some years before his death. He died in 1820, and a costly monument marks his grave on the brow of the hill above the house. There's just one problem. The town of Kingsbury never existed. Yes, John Kingsbury and his ferry were real. Kingsbury does have an elaborate grave overlooking the Catawba. Kingsbury's daughter went on to be a famous opera singer. Some of Kingsbury's family did live in the lockkeeper's house at Rocky Mount Canal, which was across from this mythical town of Kingsbury. Kingsbury, his ferry, and family were real enough, but not the town. The late historian Louise Pettis recounted research done by Mark Greer on the South Carolina Gen website. Quote, "Mark Greer, through use of the plats that accompany the various deeds, is able to show that on none of them is there any indication of a village. Towns would have been state franchised, and none by the name of Kingsbury was ever franchised." Greer does point out, though, there is no evidence of such a village. It would have been an excellent site for one. At the same spot that Mill's Atlas places Kingsbury, Barclay's 643-acre plat shows two roads, one marked Road to Camden and the other to Lancaster Village. On the opposite side of the river, roads led to Winnsboro and Chesterville. All would have benefited from the Charleston market. Close quote. J. Boykin was the map surveyor who included Kingsbury on the Mill's Atlas. Why he decided to put a town there is unknown. I found a couple more later maps that also included it as a town. I know Greer has done much more thorough research than my meager sifting, but from what I've seen, the name Kingsbury doesn't appear in the South Carolina archives as a place name, even when I've included alternate spellings. Neither does the name appear in the U.S. Geonames records. Kingsbury Cemetery does appear in both Geonames and on Find a Grave. The Mill's Atlas is known for its accuracy, so it seems a bit weird that this non-existent town appears on it. I've used the atlas for years to locate ghost towns in South Carolina. To my knowledge, no other state has as comprehensive an atlas for this early in the country's history. It's disconcerting that there's an error of this magnitude. This discovery sent me down yet another rabbit hole. Towns that never existed. Fictional towns like Metropolis and Gotham aside, I was curious about other towns that exist only on paper. Through my research, I've found 4 categories of these so-called paper towns. 1, a town planned out on paper that never really took off. 2, a town that was never meant to exist, but was advertised simply as a scam for investors. 3, an area incorporated for political reasons, such as a town on the edge of a larger town incorporated to prevent annexation into the larger town. 4, a copyright trap. There are lots of stories about early settlers that had hoped to plan towns that just never made it. I've covered several of these in previous episodes. When a settler came to an area, one of the first things he usually did was to lay out plots for their town in the hopes of selling those plots and attracting more settlers. Some of these town plats were much more ambitious than the reality of the situation. For example, Pinckneyville was supposed to be the, quote, Charleston of the upstate, close quote, and its town plat features streets with names that mirror those in Charleston. That just didn't happen. However, Pinckneyville clearly did exist. There were stores, a courthouse, and the other things that define a town. Then there's Saxagotha, located on the other side of the Congaree River from what would eventually become Columbia. In 1735, the area known as Congaree Township was renamed Saxagotha after the region in Germany. The township covered 20,000 acres and had an elaborate plat laid out. According to the website Carolina.com,
for a township that had been created with 20,000 acres, Saxagotha Township never flourished. Most of those who opted for this location simply wanted large tracts of land and to be quite separated from their neighbors. During the royal period, Saxagotha Township never established any formal towns or permanent settlements where people congregated other than a church or two.
The website goes on to say,
during all of this, Saxagotha Township ceased to exist. Since no significant permanent towns were ever established in the 20,000-acre tract, the name Saxagotha disappeared, not even recognized in the current state of South Carolina.
There were also regions that took on the surname of the family that settled the area, like Smithville or Robertsville from a previous episode. Unlike Kingsbury, many of these places are still listed as a populated place in the GeoNames database, even if they never achieved the status of a town or city. I'm more familiar with my home state of South Carolina, but I'm sure there are other examples in early colonial states, towns that were planned out on paper, but never came to fruition. As I searched through the newspaper archives for the term paper town, I came across another usage of the term. As the United States expanded westward, there were wide open stretches of land, just ripe for new cities and for speculators. This led to land fraud. Investors were often asked to buy into towns that never existed. There are several examples of this, mostly in western expansion states. The town of Shelbyville in California was one of these paper towns. Here's a report from an 1889 article in the Daily Morning Republican in Fresno. It was written as a letter to the mayor of Fresno, with a response.
To the mayor of Fresno City, California. Sir, Will you please do me a favor and answer me at as early a date as convenient? I have a deed of 5 lots in the town of Shelbyville, Fresno County. Lots number 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42 in block 249. Please tell me what they are worth, as I would sell them, or if you cannot attend to the matter, tell me some person who is in the business. Yours respectfully, William Hutchinson, Downs, Kansas.
Ah, William, you are the victim of a great fraud. Have you read Dickens's Martin Chuzzlewit? If not, read it and reflect when you come to that part of the story which tells of the arrival of Marin and his friend Mark Tabley to some city lots that they bought in America. When they got there, they found themselves in an uninhabited swamp. The fine hotel, the broad avenues, the rows of neat cottages and imposing business houses that they had seen on the map in the company's office were not there. It was a paper town. So is Shelbyville.
Another California paper in 1888, the Ontario Record, decried the explosion of paper towns in Southern California.
The term paper town is applied to the new places founded in this section during the recent boom. The term carries with it to the prejudiced a sort of opprobrium. It is supposed in certain quarters that the losses sustained by the unwary from investing in paper towns would run up into the millions if they could all be gathered into one exhibit. Between 1882 and the present year of grace, the entire area of Southern California grew apace in population. Hundreds of miles of railroad were built through it, and many industries were put on their feet. In this development, of course, many new towns have sprung up. The real estate boomer is nothing if not quick to take a hint. If you went to the boomer's office, he would show you a city, on paper. It had a big hotel, waterworks, a bank, streetcar lines, and all the other belongings of a town. They were all on paper, and as yet no local habitation but merely a name made the airy nothing a town. Hence the term paper towns. The prevalent idea, away from here, is that all the new towns thus laid out in these parts during the past few years were of this delusive and deceptive nature, fruitless and disappointing to those who had put their money into the losing quest.
I came across examples of these fraudulent paper towns in Texas, California, and other western states. Fraudulent land deals weren't limited to the 19th century. The news archives are full of speculation with land in Florida and other resort areas. It may not have involved a town per se, but the concept is still the same. The 1988 movie Dirty Rotten Scoundrels had a great example of this.
Now, first, intros. Nikos, get over here. Nikos, come here.
All right, Paula.
Come on, everybody. I want you to meet Mr. Big Stuff. I was showing Nikos property in Florida. He goes, if I'm going to invest $16 million, I want to do it someplace new. I say, like where? He goes, how about Australia? And then it hits me. Boom, Australia. What, are you kidding me? We got to go meet Mr. Australia himself, I say. So he goes, why not? I go, why not? Pretty soon the whole group goes, why not? So here we are. So, Nikos Papadopoulos, I'd like you to meet the favorite son of Australia, Chips O'Toole.
G'day, Nikos. How's it going, sport? Good on you, cobber. Chips O'Toole, hotels and oil from down under.
You still have any of those situations available in Sydney?
No, it's all gone, Paula. Never mind, Nikos. People drop out, don't they? Anyway, coming up to the house, we put a couple of shrimps on the barbie for you.
Hey, I almost forgot somebody. Mr. Junior Partner, the man Chips can't do without, the whiz kid, Randy Bentwick. Unfortunately, Randy is a mute. All right, everybody, get on up to the house for a drink. You want to refresh those cocktails, don't you? The ice is melting. Hurry, hurry. Go on up, follow the path around the house. keep going. That's it, keep going. I'll be right up there. Fellas, last year I made $3 million, but your 50,000 was the most fun. Are you ready? Then let's go get them.
As I waded through the news archives, I came across the phrase paper town used in a way I never expected. This was usually on the outskirts of a larger, established city. A neighborhood in an unincorporated area would seek incorporation so that they would not be annexed by a larger entity. The idea was so that they would avoid the higher taxes of being in a larger city. This seemed to be a scheme developed in the 1950s and 60s. The town Cityview on the northwest edge of Greenville was one such paper town, incorporated in 1960. The town wasn't able to support itself and dissolved in 1995. It was annexed into Greenville. The town of St. Andrews outside of Columbia wasn't as successful. In 1964, the community sought to incorporate to avoid annexation. According to an article in the state newspaper,
A group of St. Andrews property owners voted 56-41 Tuesday night to call an election on whether or not to incorporate a portion of the area into a paper town, which would be a barrier to possible annexation with the city of Columbia. L.G. Funderburk, attorney for the incorporation petitioners, fielded a number of pro and con arguments before the vote. He portrayed the proposed paper town as one in name only, in which the elected officials would perform no duties and would possibly serve without pay unless otherwise legally required.
St. Andrews was not successful in its attempt to incorporate and remains an unincorporated, census-designated area today. In 1968, the state legislature introduced a bill to limit these paper town schemes. Another article in the state describes it this way.
Paper towns are generally designated as those non-functioning municipalities chartered to avoid annexation by an existing city, and which ceased to operate after they were incorporated. Proposed legislation would prevent the chartering of any new municipality within 5 miles of an existing city, unless the area to be incorporated had a population of at least 15,000 persons. The bill would also call for the revocation of the charter of any municipality which ceased to function as a city.
After many compromises, the bill passed in 1976. Under terms of the legislation, 71 South Carolina towns lost their charters. According to the Herald in Rock Hill, quote, "These towns whose charters were issued long ago and had gone out of business, that is, they were no longer providing services, they had no mayor or council. Some of them had town limit signs, but actually existed in name only," close quote. Now we come to my favorite kind of paper town, the copyright trap. The first time I'd heard about these was on the podcast 99% Invisible. It introduced me to the term Mount Weasel. According to Wikipedia,
a Mount Weasel is a term for a deliberately fictitious entry inserted into a dictionary or encyclopedia to catch copycats or plagiarists. It's named after the fictional Lillian Virginia Mount Weasel, who was included in the 1975 fourth edition of the New Columbia Encyclopedia.
If an encyclopedia publisher just copied from another publisher and included an entry for Mount Weasel, then it would be obvious that they had plagiarized the previous work. Map makers did the same thing. In relatively remote areas, cartographers might add a small town name that usually makes no sense or does not exist. If a different company incorporated the same location, then they would know that their map had been plagiarized. The most unusual example of a paper town on a map was the town of Agloe in New York. In the 1920s, the company General Drafting created a fake town on a dirt road as a copyright trap. The name's town, Agloe, was taken from the letters of the mapmakers' names. At some point, a general store opened in the area. The proprietors looked on the map made by General Drafting and saw that they were in Agloe, so they named their business Agloe General Store. Fast forward a few years. Rand McNally produced a map of the area and included the town of Agloe. General Drafting called foul, saying that Rand McNally had fallen for a copyright trap. But Rand McNally was able to point to the Agloe General Store, indicating that it was a real place. At least now it was. Eventually, Agloe was removed from the maps. It once appeared on Google Maps, but no longer. When I queried GeoNames, it's no longer listed there either. But Agloe lives on. It's now become a tourist destination, largely due to the young adult novel by John Green entitled Paper Towns. The novel was made into a movie in 2015.
It's a paper town. Paper houses and paper people. Everything's uglier up close.
Aren't you? You'll go to the paper towns and you'll never come back.
Now back to the town of Kingsbury. Which of these categories does it fall into? Was it a place that was expected to grow into a larger city? Or was it an early example of a copyright trap? Only Jay Boykin knows. The result is, I don't implicitly trust maps. There's nothing like a bit of ground truthing to see what's really there. So, I took a trip over to the east bank of the Catawba River. Now, I've kayaked the Stumpy Pond area several times, but Kingsbury was supposedly just below the Stumpy Pond Dam at the Cedar Creek access, a bit further downriver. I was looking for a way to cross Cedar Creek and bushwhack my way up to Kingsbury's grave. Sadly, I couldn't find a way across without getting soaked. The next step was to drive back to Cedar Creek Road and enter the Liberty Hill Wildlife Management Area. There were dirt roads that supposedly ran down to the gravesite. I found the correct road, but it was muddy, steep, and rutted. I trust the all-wheel drive on my Subaru, but not that much. Having 2 strikes, I wasn't ready to completely strike out. I drove up to Lansford Canal, where I found the stone lock keeper's house. It was smaller than I imagined, but it was still a tangible piece of the Kingsbury mystery. Maybe one day I'll launch a kayak from Cedar Creek and see if I can access the gravesite from the water. If I do, I'll write about it on Random Connections. That does it for this episode. As usual, I've put links to the resources I've used in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
In this southern ghost town, we found a story untold. In the shadows of the past, we unravel, secrets unfold. With each step we take, we journey back in time. In this southern ghost town, we leave our footprints behind.
Thanks for listening. The opening music was composed by Lex FM with additional music from Pixabay. The song Southern Ghost Town was generated by Suno AI. All other music was composed and recorded by me, Tom Taylor. Carolina Ghost Towns is a part of the Random Connections empire. It's pretty much a one-man show, so I wear all the hats, including producer, writer, researcher, sound engineer, publicist, and bartender. If you like the show, please subscribe on your favorite pod venue and be sure to give us feedback. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for the show, you can reach me at carolinaghosttownspod@gmail.com. For more information and show notes, visit randomconnections.com. Thank you.
In this southern ghost town, we found a story untold. In the shadows of the past, we unravel, secrets unfold. With each step we take, we journey back in time. In this southern ghost town, we leave our footprints behind.